Welcome to People Love Process. Object Mosaics is another functionality that's been in Adobe Illustrator for decades, and it's been hiding itself in a drop-down menu and kind of remained unused by most creatives in the industry. Now, I first discovered it about 7 years ago, and I don't use it a lot, but for certain types of styles and workflow methods, it's a fun feature to utilize. So that's what we're going to dive into today. And you'll see some unorthodox ways you can think about it. And that's always good for features in Illustrator. The engineers design it for specific use, but creativity will give you the ability to figure out what else could you do with it. And I think that's always fun. Now, you're going to find it under Object. And if you go down, you can see Create Object Mosaic. We don't have anything selected, so it's just grayed out. So we'll address that in a little bit. I'm going to be using this Adobe stock photo of a skull. I just thought it looked kind of cool. But it gave me an idea. Now, whenever I use examples and show examples on how to use this or to pull off this, sometimes it's based off of client work, but so far I've never had a client hire me to do what I'm going to show you in this one. So, of course, I'm going to pick a theme that I personally think's fun, and that's skulls. Skulls are great. I'm always amused by people who get offended whenever I do some kind of skull graphic, and I'm going, does your head offend you? Because everybody has one, so I think that's a little weird. But this is the photo I started with, took into Photoshop, and all I did is I just cut it out of the background and kind of made it a flaming skull. Now, this was inspired by a comic book character that I kind of enjoyed growing up, and that was Ghost Rider. Now, if you think of him, he's kind of like a biker riding a chopper. He has leather outfit on with chains, but his head is a flaming skull. So that's kind of what I'm thinking here. And all I've done is I've saved this image, placed it in Adobe Illustrator, and we're going to utilize the Object Mosaic to turn it into some cool kind of 8-bit inspired artwork. So I also grew up with 8-bit artwork. When video games first came out, of course, my parents wouldn't get me an Atari. They just didn't want to spend the money on it. But of course, I had friends who had it, so I go over to their house. And I remember spending a whole day in a Dungeon and Dragons kind of 8-bit pixelized game, and we heard about some Easter egg. It was the first one ever hidden in a video game, and we spent all day trying to get to it, and we finally found it. So that was kind of fun. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So if we select this now and go to Object and pull down, notice it's still grayed out. That's because you have to take placed images and you have to embed them. So let's go ahead and open up this panel. This is the links panel. And you can see we'll go ahead and drag this up here. You can see we have this selected. All we're going to do is embed this image. With the image selected, we'll go to the option menu, we'll go down and we'll embed it. And now it's embedded in Illustrator. We can close this at this point. And with this image selected, we'll go back to the object menu. Now it's not grayed out. So we're going to go ahead and open this up. And this is where it'll give you options. It'll tell you what the size is. You can go ahead if you want. It's calling them tiles. Because the engineers named it Object Mosaic. A mosaic is something you'd use with tiles to create a pattern in a wall or a floor. And so they're thinking, do you want to have like the grout area, the space in between the tiles? We're not going to use the tile spacing. We're just going to focus on the number of tiles. Now here, you can put anything in here you want, maybe from the edge of the left to the edge of the right. You could put in 5 here, and you could go 5 tall, and that would make it pretty big, and it would just analyze this image and just color it. We're not going to do that, although I am going to show you that too, because it's a cool way to get theme colors. We want ours to be a lot more tiles than that, so we'll just punch in 85 by 85, And because we're using an image, if you don't want to get rid of your image, then deselect, delete raster. If you want, after it creates the mosaic, to delete the raster, which we do in this case, we're going to have this selected. Everything else will leave by default, and I'll go ahead and click OK. Now, depending on what computer you use, it'll crunch the numbers, and boom, all of this is vector artwork. Now, if I deselect it, you can see it turned it into some pretty cool 8-bit kind of artwork. If I go to keyline view, Command Y, you can see it's just nothing but vector squares with the colors pulled from the image it was sourced from. Now, one thing we want to do is we want to go in here, because all around the edge we have all these white squares, and we don't want that. We want it to kind of be cut out still from the background. Unfortunately, it's too old of a feature to tell it to ignore the white background, so it will still render those as vector images. So the way you can get around that is you can select one of these like I did here. I'll select this, go up to select, pull down to same, and go to fill color like this. And notice I have Command F1 here. That's weird. It says F, but it actually is F1. But anyway, we want to select this, and it will select all the white. Now, I don't want everything to delete. All the stuff on the perimeter I do, but what's on the inside of the vector skull, I want to retain those. So with these selected, I'm going to go Command G, and I'm going to group them so I can select it like this. Oops, looks like I selected all of them. So all the white ones are selected. I'll group it. I'll double click into it. Oops, let's go like this. Double click into it. Command A, select all of them. I'm going to deselect the ones on the inside of my arc because I want to retain those. I don't want those to be holes. I want those to remain in place. Now, everything else selected, I'll just hit delete. So isolation mode is good for this type of workflow because you don't want to accidentally select other elements. And now that we have that done, we can just hit the escape key to get back to the artboard. If I now Command A, select everything, it's all cut out. That's going to work great. Now, once I looked at this, I figured, you know what? I want to get some cool aesthetic going on this. And the more I looked at this, I'm going, I need to give it kind of like Skynet eyes. So we're going to work on this layer here. And I'm going to zoom in because all we're going to do is I want to figure out where to place kind of, for lack of better terms, kind of for his eyes, where I want to place it. And I think what I want to do, and if you hover over this, you can see it. I think I'll go from the edge of his nose right about here, and I'll go 4 over like that. And I think here. So I'm going to just click into here. I'm going to select 9 of these tiles like this, and I'm going to cut them. Then I'll go ahead and hit escape, deselect. We're going to just lock this layer so we don't select it. And I'm going to paste those in place, Command F, right where I copied them from, like that. And let's go to swatches. I'm going to color them red, like this. Make sure we have those aligned with our, oops, we locked that by accident. Make sure, okay, those are in place. We can relock that layer. The middle one I'm going to leave at full value. Now, if you look at this red swatch, notice the bottom right-hand triangle. That means it denotes as a global color. So if you go to the color palette, you can see it has a T that stands for tint. We're going to select the one at 3 o'clock positions, 6, 9, and 12. On these, we're going to adjust the tint to 70. So it's only a 70% value like this. And you can do a tint like that if you wanted to. In this case, I'm not going to do a tint though. Oops, wrong way, that way. Not going to do a tint. What we're going to do is we're going to do opacity because I want this to show through to the background, which is a dark void of his eye socket. So we're going to use the same principle, but instead of being a tint, it's going to be the opacity. So we'll go ahead and hit 70 like that. Then we're going to select the ones in the corner. These are like going back further into the darkness, so they won't be as opaque. So we'll go 50 like that. And then if we select all of those and just group them, you can see what that looks like. Now, if we zoom out, now it looks like he has a glowing eye, which I think is kind of cool. Now, I'll just replicate that for the other side. So I'll just select it. And if you have the contextual menu bar, you can select it and hit duplicate. In this case, I just hit my F3 key that makes a nice copy. And this is where I would turn on or unlock this layer because I want to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So I need to go over a little bit more. And we'll just snap it to the edge. Oops. Maybe over one more. There we go, like that. And now, if we go ahead and zoom out, we have nice Skynet glowing eyes. AI has come to life. It's going to take over. So what would you use this type of thing for? Well, I think utilizing this feature would be great for an 8-bit style. It doesn't have to be based off of a photograph. And by the way, you can apply this. You can rasterize a vector image and utilize this on that to create kind of 8-bit art. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. But here's a use example where I took it to create what would be an ad for maybe it's a store that sells kind of old games for Atari and Nintendo NES or Game Boy, Sega. All the things that I grew up with. And the one I really loved growing up was we used Commodore 64, but also in television was the big one. I loved the baseball game on there when it came out in 16 bits. So that's kind of how you can utilize it within the context of a design based off of whatever you're creating. But let's see how else you can leverage this feature. Is this all it's made for? Well, this is kind of how Adobe intended people to use it, to take imagery that's photographic or pixel-based and kind of create vector art easily. But there's other ways you can use this. So let's go ahead and turn on this layer, because another way you can think about it, if we go ahead and open up our links window here, you can see we have this one here selected. So we're going to go ahead and embed this one. And then we're going to take this one, which is a nice shot of the Arizona desert, and we're going to go ahead and embed that one. So we've embedded the two images shown here, and now we're just going to select this one, go to Object, bring up Object Mosaic. Let's position this here. But we don't want to have this many. How are we going to use this now? What's different than what I just showed you? Well, we're not going to use this to create 8-bit art. We're going to use this and we're going to go absurd with the numbers. We're only going to do 3 wide and we're going to do 4 tall. Why are we doing it this way? Because we're going to use this to generate a tonal family based off of all the values shown in this photograph, because that's all Illustrator does when it runs this inside of Illustrator. It analyzes the photograph and then will create a tonal family based off of it. So with just 3x4, I can go ahead and again, we're going to put delete raster. So it just gets rid of the image we used and click OK. And boom, you have a nice color palette. Now I wouldn't just leave it like this. These are raw colors. If I just select one of these with direct selection and go to color, you can see it's fractional numbers. So I'd probably go in and dial them in and then save them as global colors. But this is a fast way of doing it that's even a little faster than using the new color methodology in Adobe Illustrator. So if you so you might want to consider this. You don't always have to use the latest, greatest features to get something easily. Let's go ahead and do the other one. We'll select this one, go to Object, go to Object Mosaic. We're going to use the exact same settings, and we'll just hit OK. and boom, you have a color palette here. Now, is it perfect? No. Even generative AI recolor using the recolor tool methods in Adobe Illustrator aren't perfect, certainly aren't perfect, even when they say it has AI driving it. Because if your let's say it's a logo design is black and you use generative AI and say, hey, show me options, it'll just show you options of black. That's how smart it is, or not smart it is. But I thought this was a really great way to get some simple color palettes and work from those moving forward. So let's jump to the next thing, which is vector conversion. So here's a pizza monster I did on a direction for a client. I just knew they wouldn't go for this, so I didn't even show them the sketch. I wanted to build it out so I'd have the art. I ended up doing something a little more cutesy for them, but I think it was meant for youth, and they thought, I don't know, I think kids would think this is pretty cool, but they didn't, so that's fine. So what we're going to do here is if I select this and go to Object, notice it's grayed out. That's because it only works with raster-based images. So we need to go ahead and rasterize this. Well, how do you do that? Well, we're just going to go up here to Object. We're going to pull down to Raster. It'll bring this up. We don't need CMYK. We can go, well, we'll just leave it there. That's fine. White background's fine. Art optimizing, you want to make sure to have on. And then you want to pick a resolution here. Now, you can make this resolution whatever you want. I'll just leave it at 300 and I'll click it. So now this is, if we go to Keyline View, Command Y, it's just a rasterized image. And if I go to the links palette, you can see this image, since we rasterized it in Illustrator, it's not a placed image like these two. It's actually embedded now. So if we close this and go Object and go down to Object Mosaic, you can see it gives us the ability to go ahead and select that, open this up. And in this case, I want to adjust this, and we want it to be, let's say, we'll do 90 wide. It's not a perfect circle, so it'll be a little taller. So we'll go about 100 tall, like that. It'd be nice, and you can tell the age of this feature because if it was a newer one, they'd have a preview button. There is no preview, so you're just committing to it, and if you don't like it, you have to Command Z to kind of step backwards to get back to your original art. Kind of a hassle. These are the kind of features that were developed decades ago. Illustrator has never come back and refined this, improved it, or made it more forward-facing. Once again, it's hidden in a pull-down menu. So we'll just go ahead and click OK. And it's crunching all the numbers. And you can see that's pretty pixelated looking, but it's a lot faster than trying to create this with a bunch of, just creating squares and coloring them on your own. Now, again, I would select this and go Command or Option F1 to select all of them. And then that way I can just hit delete. So I have all my artwork, and it's always a good habit once you have this done to go Command G. That way it's just one click to select it. Now, if you wanted it to be simpler, then of course you wouldn't make it as many in terms of the numbering of tiles you want. I just wanted to show you that you could do vector-based artwork, or start with vector-based artwork, rasterize it, and then use Object Mosaic. Now, of course, it works best with rasterized images. So if you have an image like this, and you want to go ahead and turn this in to a pixelized kind of looking design, then you could select this. By the way, let's go to here. You can see it's just placed, so it won't work if it's a placed image. It does have to be embedded. So we'll go ahead and embed this. We'll close this. We'll go to Object, go down to Object Mosaic. We'll open it up, and on this one, it's almost a square. It's a little narrower than it is tall, so we'll just punch in. We won't do quite as much on this. We'll go 31, maybe 35 here, like that. And you can even, since this is just gray, you could just pick gray if you wanted to. But since this is a grayscale, you could go gray if you wanted to, or you can leave it color. It doesn't really matter because there's no color in here. It's not going to generate any colors not in the image. And now we'll just go OK. And boom, you get this. And that kind of looks kind of cool. Now, of course, if I go here and I select some of these and I go Option F1, you can see it's selecting all these perimeter shapes like this. And I'd probably just delete those. So what's left is just this here. Now, here's another thing you can do that's kind of cool is if I go ahead and select one of these shapes like this, and I go ahead and I believe it's under effects. I probably should have tested this before I started recording and I forgot to. So we're going to wing it and just see if it happens. If I go ahead and, I'm sorry, not effect. We want select like this, and I'll pull down to global edit. It's going to recognize all the other shapes that are the same characteristics. And now this is where it's a little unintuitive. I'm going to zoom in on this, select my direct selection tool, and I'm going to go like this, and boom, it's going to change everything. Maybe I want all these circles. So you can do something like that using the global edit, using the mosaic. So it's just a good example of how if you take these features, and by the way, that global edit, that's another thing I'll cover in another movie because it's kind of cool what you can do with this if you combine it with other features. And I wanted to give you a hint of that in this one. So Object Mosaics is one of those features released decades ago that Adobe has never really further developed or improved upon. But now you know it exists. You can apply this approach to the appropriate project when it comes your way. I really want to thank those who have become members of the People Love Process channel. Your support helps me to create new content like this. So watch out for the new members only webpage where I'll be posting resources you can access and download in addition to what you get on this channel via the exercise files. I'll let all members know once I have that finalized, and that's going to be for members only. And I'm going to put some great killer content on there so you'll have access to all of it. Until next time, thank you for watching People Love Process. And as always, I hope this content helps you improve your own creative process.